Mark?
Hello and welcome. This is Access Astrology. We tune in every week to talk about the sky and how it's reflected on the earth and in the relationships around us. We're three astrologers. We've been doing this for a while and it's fun. My name is Mark Wolf and I'm in New York City.
And I am Heather Rowan Robbins, speaking to you from Western Montana.
And I'm Ann Ortley here at the Bright Red Desk, New York City, on a beautiful day. Beautiful day. So, welcome everybody.
And this is the chart for today, Tuesday, September 30th, with that moon in Capricorn up there strong, and the grand trine is still on, that's been cooking for this last week, with the sun at 8 degrees of Libra. It's moving out of that grand trine, but it's still cooking with Uranus and Pluto. So a week of change, a week of evolution, and a week to challenge us to grow. Mark, how have you seen that trine? How is it affecting your world?
Well, it's allowing opportunities for change, and I see people taking on change. It's sort of, there's a feeling of cleaning out the closet, and I think that tends to go with the sun entering Libra every year. It's like rebalancing life and deciding what goes and what stays, and that's been happening. And the grand trine with Pluto and Uranus helps to make transformation and change at a deeper level, and that's what people are experiencing that I see.
Yeah.
And expect the unexpected. I always think of when Uranus is involved, I think of that Monty Python skit. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. That no one that the unexpected could be positive, could be a challenge, but it is how do we roll with the changes that we're seeing. And adaptability, one of the gifts from Uranus, it acts like a clutch. It can help us shift gears, but we have to be ready to change gears if we need to. Right. And that can be a real challenge.
Yeah, with Pluto throwing its energy into that, it really makes it not just sudden change, but also important.
But I have a friend who's a neighbor, an old friend that is building. I've been trying to build a house next to us for years, and finally got the house ordered last spring, put the down payment on right before the tariffs kicked in. It was being ordered from Canada. Then so they got stuck with they're going to try to build it down here instead of up there so that it would save 50% tariff. Then it turned out the tariffs would be cheaper if they brought in the whole. Anyway, it's supposed to arrive this week. So it's a breakthrough finally of all of this change and planning, and this poor company, which has been trying to shift where it builds houses from America to Canada to America to Calgary in order to come up with a good system that helps everybody save money.
And people aren't hit with that huge amount of extra tariff. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, 50% for
a lot
metal.
Just craziness. So I'm noticing in this week, we have Venus approaching that south node, which is going to trigger the eclipse season again, because we're still in eclipse energy till we get to the full moon. But we also have Jupiter on a world point right now, 22 and a half of the cardinal, and Mercury squaring it on coming into a world point over the next couple days. So as we finish the sun opposite Neptune when we were in the fog, now we're going to get the information we need to help us make decisions that are good. Jupiter is in its exaltation in Cancer, so he's in a happy place for the most part. Right now, he's working with Mercury in Capricorn, or I'm sorry, the moon in Capricorn, but the moon's going to go in Aquarius tomorrow, right around the same time that Mercury comes to square the Jupiter. So you're going to watch for really important news that this whole eclipse has been bringing up. And the Venus is back at the degree of the eclipse tomorrow, 15 of the mutable of Virgo Pisces. So this is kind of the codex to the story, or the epilogue. And so we have, when we look at eclipses, we do, is it new full or full new? Sometimes there's more than two. But in this year, there was a full moon eclipse on the 7th of September. And then we had a new moon on the 21st. And if you think back, the new moon before that was 0 Virgo and then 29 Virgo. So kind of an alpha and omega of Virgo, which is very much about how are we supposed to serve? How are we supposed to work with this? So as Venus goes in and triggers the eclipse degree, and Mercury is the ruler of the Virgo South Node, and Mercury squares Jupiter, we're going to come to understand what were the lessons we were to be learning on eclipses, because they bring things up and they have us look at them and go, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And then, and then you're forced to kind of process, work with it, deal with it, figure out your next steps. So this is the week that happens. But it happens from a perspective of, okay, these are the steps I'm going to take going forward. Whereas you may have found, and a lot of people do, during eclipse season, they get really wiped out. Or like Mark had last week, he had a cold and was exhausted and spent the weekend in bed rather than his normal run around and have a great time with his wife. They're always on the road doing something. So now it's like, all right, that week he spent in bed on the eclipse, now it's brought in all these thoughts and feelings, and also whatever you've thought and felt over the eclipse cycle. The universe is saying, okay, let's integrate those lessons, because Venus in Virgo rules the sun and rules the Mercury. And it's saying, let's put those maybe in a file cabinet, or like Heather was throwing things away, maybe throwing away things and releasing stuff. I had a friend who was scanning photos from when we were 1982. So I got a bunch of photos that she scanned, and I'm so much younger then, So the energy is just really kind of potent. And Mars just finished with a finger of God to the Mercury Uranus. So there could have been some kind of surprise thing. Last week we were talking about watch for the Mars square Pluto. Well, then Mars left the square to Pluto and he formed a finger of God with Neptune and Uranus and said, here's the surprise, right? So now you're processing the surprise from last week. We also have Vesta on a world point. Now, the thing when the sky is like this, with nobody in the sky in their own favorite place, the only planet that's happy by placement is Mars. Jupiter's exalted in Cancer, so he's happy. He's having a good time by himself. But the rest of them are all having to talk to someone else to figure out what to do. And I always encourage people to talk to each of their planets every day, and kind of go, okay, so like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? Where are you with this? And that can help a lot, because the planets are not making independent decisions. They're making decisions based on, well, that information and that information. Oh, and that information. So this week, when you get a big download of information, go, oh, now what? And kind of honor that download of information with this week.
And confirm your facts to make sure you're not reading things into it that is not there.
Yeah. And it may be a little wounding, because Mercury is going to go form a T-square with Chiron. You may go, that's a little bit of an ouch. Like, well, yeah, ouches teach us. You touch that hot stove and you have a memory of that. So, yeah.
And I also see that Jupiter is squaring Mercury, or Mercury is moving into a tight square with Jupiter. So watch it, but tendency to say too much. My dog is chewing on a squeaky toy here. And then, speaking of saying too much, my Gemini dog tends to take a toy and walk around the house squeaking with it, speaking. But I'm just with Mercury square Jupiter saying, don't talk so much.
He decided to demo it for our recording.
Exactly. It's quite funny. But I was saying that in relationships, it can be a little touchy this week with Venus and Virgo, which can be a little hard on ourselves and hard on one another. It's going to be important that you find what you did right and what the person that you love did right, or the person that positive feedback will matter a lot. People's defenses are a little hair trigger, not a little, a lot hair trigger with Mars and Scorpio. They can pull back or retreat or be passive aggressive instead of aggressive, or they can be aggressive. But it may be difficult for them. Often with Mars in Scorpio, so many old emotions get stirred up when those ouchies hit, as Anne put it, when you feel that tender place, that they suppress it rather than work it through, or they blow up and you go, where did that come from? So notice that it's kind of a little Mount St. Helens-ish at the moment. Think more Pele, spillage, and to use that in a way to be in tender in emotions when they're in reasonable relationship. Virgo and Scorpio get along, but that's kind of deep emotional pieces. So when you're dealing with strangers or you're dealing in relationship issues, look to create some safety underneath it. Know when to stand back and leave prickly people alone and just invite them out rather than go in after them. Because Mars and Scorpio, one of the things that can really tick us off now is having our privacy invaded. So talk a lot, but don't invade people's territories.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Then when you feel your own values are being invaded, you have to respond firmly. Don't just let it go, because it'll put you in the worst place as you go on.
Right.
Jupiter loves to expand, so once it gets hold of something, it makes it bigger and bigger. And that's where you have to draw these boundaries and do it early and let it be known what the boundary is and stick to it.
So we got a question every year when somebody comes up with the 13th constellation again and talks up, and New York Times had an article about how outdated our astrology system and it's all wrong. And we disagree. That's a real misunderstanding of our concepts. And I have a lot to say on that, but you mentioned that you have something very clear to tell people about that
Right.
canard.
Yeah. Okay. So what it is and they're not incorrect, but there's different ways of looking at astrology, right? So the way that they were saying, what we talk about, Heather, Mark, and I do, is tropical zodiac. And different cultures have different astrologies. So in India and in Hindu and in China and the siderealists, which are part of our group here on the Western astrology, what they all look at is where the constellations are against the backdrop of the stars. And that's a good way those are very valid astrologies. They give you the correct information. The New York Times does that, as when you look at where the New York Times says Saturn is in the little astronomy section. It's also where the astronomers say the planets are. So that's all good. That's totally fine. Lots of people do it that way. What we do is we look at where the sun is on the face of the earth, and it's called tropical zodiac. And so tropical is, I'm sitting here looking at my coffee table, what's right in front of me in my life. I can look out my window and see what the siderealists see, where the stars are against the constellation, but I want to see where the stars are against my own life in my own world. And because Western astrology above the equator is governed by where the sun is in our growing seasons, that's why we use that. Like the sun just crossed the equator last week, going south towards the Tropic of Capricorn. It's actually a line on the globe. There's a line on the globe called the Tropic of Cancer. Tropy means sun. Sun gets as high as that, turns into Cancer season. Then it comes down Libra season, goes down to the bottom Capricorn season, comes up to Aries season. And so it marks our seasons, it marks our ingresses, it marks our growing seasons. And we use that because we are focused on how life is being lived on Earth. Like Vedic astrology very much is about your past lives and your current lives and where are you in your evolutionary path and what do you need to do so you don't come back as a frog. We take approach that you're here for your solar life to build your life according to what your sun's mandate is. And you know how important the sun is. You wear a coat in the winter, you sweat in the summer. We watch that pattern as how it affects us on a personal level. And so that's the two differences. So they're
Right.
neither are wrong, both are right. It's just, are you looking at your living room coffee table, or are you looking out the window at the stars? They're
Right.
both correct.
I
So,
think as someone who works a lot with the cycles of the season in my spiritual path, it feels very clear to me that this is an Earth centric approach.
yeah,
We are paying attention to how the planets affect us here. 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, at the very first day of spring, when the equinox hit, behind the sun was in front of the constellation Aries. So we named that time after the constellation. But if you look at the stars, like what do the stars know about a ram anyway? That is a symbol that's very much a part of our earthly life. And all of those symbols that we then divide up the sky into those pieces. There is no problem with having different ways of looking at the world. The trouble comes that we have the same names for very different concepts of the signs.
right.
So in that system, feel free to look at it. In our system, it's not wrong. There is no 13th constellation on it because we're dividing up the path of the sun. We're not that were once labeled for the stars behind it. The stars behind it are powerful. We use the fixed stars, but it's not part of how we define the signs themselves. And I think that hits the that trigger point for so many people.
And
There's
to
also
add
there's
it,
also a problem. There's
go
also a problem with that 13th constellation. It isn't actually within the zodiac. It sits uh, a little above. I think it's Scorpio, and it has part of it reaches down into the area of Scorpio, but it doesn't really reside in that same space. It's a little bump out to the side,
Mhm.
but some people see that and say, well, here's this other constellation, and it should be included in.
Yeah,
Not really.
no, not
You
really.
can, it's gerrymandering.
Mhm. Yeah. And also the universal symbolism over and over. And to add to it, there's a kind they didn't even bring up called heliocentric. There are people that don't look at Earth, that look at the sun as, we're just a satellite. And in heliocentric there is no moon, because it's just the planets and we have Earth, and then you're in actually a whole different sign. So,
Mhm.
it's different perspectives. The same way when you light a picture, you light a person, you can see it coming in different energies. So, but they do bring it out. Oh, and everybody calls and goes, "What if I?" Yeah, I'm like, no, no, calm down, calm down. Are you in your living room? You're in the living room with me when you come to me for a reading. When you
Mhm.
go to my Vedic friends for a reading, you go sit out in the backyard and you look at the stars. And they
Mhm.
both work. They give you just, another way of looking at your chart. So,
Beautifully said. Um, and coming back, I wanted to. We got questions about Trump and Vance. Someone said that many psychics that they are talking to or listening to are predicting that Trump won't make it much farther. I don't think that's we'll see, but it's interesting. So they wanted to look at Trump and Vance's chart and see what we see. I thought this was interesting. This is John. This is JD Vance's chart with Trump's planets on the outside because it's been interesting to see. He's changed so many times. JD Vance has. He has his Mars in Scorpio natally, which and that trines um, Trump's Venus Saturn conjunction in Cancer. That's that deep defensiveness that could be just self protection, it could protect the country, or it could be just deeply defensive, emotionally defensive of their own position. Both of them have a Leo rising within a few degrees of each other, and uh, Vance has the Venus on Leo on the ascendant. Trump has Mars on the ascendant, and they play Mars and Venus in Leo very informative, very expressive. They play Mars and Venus, almost good cop, bad cop, but more like, bad cop and what he says, like backup with the Venus and Leo on that point.
Heather,
But Sun is
Heather,
pretty
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. There's a lot of sort of feedback through your microphone.
I'll try moving my microphone again. See if I might have to get it to my.
You talk enthusiastically, and it flies around. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry
there
about
you
that.
go.
So we're looking at Trump's. We can go back to that chart, but this is Trump's natal chart and progressions. What are you seeing as far as his health is concerned? And um, I, I, I don't. I think it's kind of wishful thinking that he goes away right away, but that would simplify things. I think with his Moon in Scorpio down progression down at the bottom of the chart, uh, he still has work he thinks he has to do. It's all about kind of payback rather than vision forward. The Moon and progressed Moon in Scorpio at the bottom of the chart. But what do you see? I mean, I'm not sure what that's saying about his health.
Yes, don't plan your strategy on dealing with Trump according to his health.
Mm,
He's not what he appears to be health-wise, but
mm,
it's not bad. It's stuff that he's learned to deal with. So he'll tell you he's in excellent health, and he'll act and make all his decisions as though he is in excellent health. And that's the way you have to play the game.
And his Mercury progression is right on his Mars, and I know that he's had many difficult speeches this week where
Yeah,
he's really uh, spoken up in contentious ways.
That made it a little worse, Heather. You're blocking the microphone there by holding it like that. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
I'll
better.
keep trying.
No, it was good. It was good a minute ago, so that was good. Yeah, I'm also noticing Pluto in the houses of health. Or vitality is the first house,
Hmm.
and the sixth house is the illnesses. And so we see Pluto there at the edge of the sixth, and it got to 349. So it got opposite his progressed Saturn. Saturn Venus is an important planet in his chart.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
his thin-skinnedness.
yeah,
And
Hmm.
Saturn, of course, rules the fifth house, which is the 12th house of the health. So how he undermines his health. So we do see Pluto opposite Saturn. That was the World Trade Center.
Hmm.
So we see that coming in his chart. And it got there already. It will be back there again soon. I agree with you about the Scorpio moon. That's the whole vengeance business. And Mercury is, as a Gemini, Mercury is his chart ruler. He was born on a full moon eclipse. And you can see the progressed Uranus is coming to his sun. It's not there yet. His death transits are going to be Jupiterian because Jupiter rules the sixth house or the eighth house, as does Mars. So
Hmm.
we're going to look at Mars and Jupiter and what they're doing to see when he has an exit option. And one of the things with that is, we have modern medicine. 100 years ago, if you ruptured your appendix, you were dead. We do see the Mars, Mercury on there. So we know he's got a heart issue because of the swelling and the edema in his legs and in his hands. That's kind of a classic congestive heart or heart issues. And that Mars rules that sixth house in Leo. So, or the eighth house, co-rules the eighth house, and it's on the ascendant. So heart's a big issue for him. And then we look at the Jupiter. The Jupiter right now is exalted in Cancer. So he's going to get the best medical care anybody could get. He's got he's got a truck of doctors following him everywhere he goes. So there's a lot of opportunity to intervene. And we can see the transiting Jupiter comes to his Saturn, stations actually on his Venus Saturn this year. And so Jupiter in his exaltation is a nice placement. And Donald actually has born on the day Jupiter stations to go direct. So that when everybody goes, why is he so lucky? Why is he so lucky? Born on the day that Jupiter stopped. So he has a very, very strong Jupiter, which trines his sun and Uranus. So he is protected by the gods, essentially. And everybody goes, how does he get away with it? I'm like, Guy's got a really good Jupiter, and it's in Libra, and it's it's nicely placed, ruled by the Venus Saturn. He's also very tenacious. So I'm not seeing anything that says he leaves anytime soon, because he also has serious medical attention. They can do a lot of magic. Nodes are going through the 1st and 7th for the next year. And so that does often bring in different people or different chapters of the life. But there's nothing that's, and he is born on an eclipse, so we watch the eclipses carefully. But the next eclipse that will be in the spring is going to be on his progressed sun next spring. So we'll see what that one brings. But I don't think he's going anywhere that soon. So.
No, if anything, we just mean
it. I've been doing, Heather, you're going to like this one, and Mark. I go to bed every night and I send him love. And I say, Donald, I love you so much, because that's an issue, I know it's an issue because he has a Venus Saturn in Cancer.
Yeah.
He wasn't loved enough. I send him love, and then I say, thank you so much for showing us what we needed to see. You've done a really good job. You can go anytime now. So that's what I invite him to do every night as I go to sleep. We love you. You can leave now. It's good. You've done your work here. We'll figure it out from here. Thanks. You brought to light. Remember, leaders of the country bring to light the issues that the country has to deal with. And so that is what he's done. His Uranus Sun node is on our Mars in Gemini. And so we have a Mars in Gemini in the 7th, which is a place of weakness. It's in a weak sign. It's in a weak house. It's in Gemini, which is the sign of not always telling the truth. And it answers to a Mercury retrograde in the 8th house. So, we're not necessarily going to tell you the truth. We're going to tell you what you want to hear. And so his job is to waken that Mars up and have us really see ourselves. You can see that Mars and the Uranus right on that Mars, right? So he's the awakener. So you've been woken up, and then you get to figure out what you want to do with it. And I know his first term, I kept going, I thought there was a law against that. I thought that, and all it was convention. We just always did it that way. But a Sun Uranus guy, which is what he is going to break the rules because he can, because it's fun, because I want to show you. It's a little bit like the Wizard of Oz. Let me show you don't look at the guy behind the curtain. Look at the guy over there. But the great and powerful Oz, this is what we're dealing with here. So
here is a chart of America with Trump on the 2nd ring out and Vance on the 3rd ring out. And it's interesting that they both have Uranus on the cardinal axis. Vance has Uranus on the ascendant. Trump has Uranus on the descendant, so that they are, shaking things up, and they are, forgetting the rule of law and just, creating the chaos or the upset or the challenge that Uranus is so good at producing. And their Mars, Trump's Mars, and is right in the 9th house. So we're dealing with all the exciting people in our foreign culture. His Sun is right on America's Mars. And we just see so many echoes between their two charts. Trump is coming back to the Uranus return. It's going to be a couple of years, though. That's one reason why I think I don't see him leaving right away. Because usually the Uranus return is a real question about whether you want to stay or you go, but it's not quite time yet.
Yeah, and also JD's Uranus is opposite Trump's, so they both kind of counter stimulate each other,
And I wanted
between the two of them, they don't know what's coming next. So we're watching
We're watching a what? Say again?
Improvisation.
Oh, okay. That's a good way to think of it. Yeah.
Now, I was looking at the chart for the aspects right before the American Revolution, because it's also interesting, the ones right during the Civil War, too. But right before the American Revolution, we had the same planets involved in a grand trine. We had Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune forming a grand trine, bisected with Saturn and the nodes. In This was a chart for February 1774, and that's when the real troubles began to store up in the efforts to create a constitution, a
What was
Continental Congress.
what was the event then?
It wasn't a specific event. I'm just using that to kind of get that word, that grand trine. But that's when you began to see the efforts to create a Continental Congress here that would reflect what our country wanted and
Okay.
needed, and how the fight that we got for several years before the revolution began.
Got it.
So
Okay.
it was like the foundation of that was using those same planets in a grand trine that we're now seeing in a little grand trine.
Yeah.
And it can be a good shift. It was a positive shift to see things moving forward. I think this grand trine, we see the upsetting edges of it now, but as you pointed out, it pointed where the work needs to be.
Yeah.
And I see hopes that we will get there.
Well, and also this one, the earlier one's a grand trine in Earth, so it was physical declaration. Now it's a grand trine in air, so it's intellectual. Do we still believe that? Is that still are those still our beliefs? And if so,
Yeah.
how do we work with them and support them? Yeah. Interesting. That's a great example there, Heather. Thank you. Yeah.
And Mark, we're getting ready to fade out. And it may be that helping us with meditation on how to use that Mars in Scorpio,
Okay.
or
Take a moment.
whatever you feel called.
Yeah. Think about Mars in Scorpio, and that's a powerful place for Mars to be. Think about what Scorpio is for art, and what it is to bring in Mars as a collaborator. You can just think, what's that going to do with my planets, and what's it going to do with the house that it's in, and how can I use that?
Cool. Thanks, Mark. I always find that part like my favorite part of the show.
Yeah.
A new
Thank
way
you,
to
Mark.
think of things.
Good.
And we'll see you all next week.
Yes, everybody have a great week. Remember, we still have one more week of eclipse season.
Right.
You're not done yet, but